For more than 350 years, one of history's greatest cold cases has captivated everyone who hears it: the identity of the man in the Iron Mask. This is more than just a story. It's really a blueprint for how absolute power can literally erase a person, leaving behind nothing but a ghost and a legend. So let's follow the clues together and see if we can finally unmask the truth.
First, you really have to grasp the sheer scale of this thing. From 1669 all the way to his death in 1703, a single man was moved between France's most notorious prisons for 34 years. His name, his face, his entire story, they were all locked down under the tightest security imaginable, and the order came from the top, the Sun King himself, Louis XIV.
And the orders, they were chillingly specific, coming straight from the king's minister of war. The jailer, a man named St. Mars, was told that if this prisoner ever tried to talk about anything other than, his basic needs, he was to be killed on the spot. No trial, no appeal. The goal was just absolute, total silence. Now, this whole mystery could have easily just died in that prison cell, but it was brought back to life by the great writers of the Enlightenment. Thinkers like Voltaire got a hold of the whispers of this story and spun them into a legend. You can see it in this quote. He painted this picture of a man treated like royalty, yet living under an instant death sentence. It's that contradiction that really fueled the myth.
All right, so to solve this, we've got to do what any good detective would do. We have to separate the facts from all the fiction. So before we get into the really wild theories, let's just build our case file. We're going to look only at what the official records and the administrative letters actually tell us. This is the architecture of the prisoner's silence.
This timeline lays out the prisoner's entire life in captivity. It's a 34-year trek across France's most secure prisons. But here's the key detail. He was always in the custody of the exact same guy, his jailer, St. Mars. Every single time St. Mars got a promotion and a new post, he took his ancient prisoner with him. This wasn't just some criminal. This was a career-defining state secret.
And every good mystery has its cast of characters, right? Here are our key players. You've got King Louis XIV at the very top, the one who gave the order. Then there's his Minister of War, Louvois, who was basically the project manager, sending all the coded instructions. St. Mars is our man on the ground, the jailer who dedicates his entire career to this one secret. And finally, Etienne du Junca, whose detailed journal from the Bastille gives us the most reliable account of the prisoner's last years.
Now this is where it gets really weird. The security was just off the charts. In the very first letter about the prisoner, the Minister of War ordered St. Mars to build a special cell with multiple doors, one right after the other, for the specific purpose of soundproofing it. They were terrified of his voice. But, and this is the craziest part, in that same letter, the prisoner is described as only a valet. A valet? Why on earth would you build this incredible architecture of silence around a simple servant? That question is the central paradox of this whole case.
Okay, so we've got our facts straight. Now the real investigation begins. We're going to run through the lineup of the usual suspects. These are the famous theories that have dominated this story for centuries, and we're going to see if any of them actually hold up against the evidence.
So here's our suspect list. You've got the legendary royal twin, the disgraced diplomat Mazzoli, and even a cowardly general. And each theory has this little kernel of evidence that makes it seem plausible, at first glance. But as we're about to see, every single one has a fatal flaw that just doesn't line up with our timeline and the hard facts. This is the blockbuster theory, right? The one we all know from the movies. The idea of a secret twin brother, it's incredibly dramatic. But historically, it just completely falls apart. See, a royal birth in 17th century France was a public event. The whole court would be there watching to make sure the succession was legit. Hiding a twin would have been impossible. But the real nail in the coffin is this. Remember how our prisoner was forced to act as a valet for another high-profile inmate? No prince of the blood would ever be made into a servant. It was a complete violation of the era's super rigid social code. Case closed. All right, on to suspect number 2, the Italian diplomat, Mattioli. Now, for a long time, this was the leading theory, and you can totally see why. The name Marchioli on the death certificate is almost a perfect match. It looks like an open and shut case, right? Well, the archives don't lie. We have crystal-clear records showing that Mattioli died in 1694. Our prisoner was very much alive and was moved to the Bastille 4 years after Mattioli was already dead. So they are definitively two different men.
So, if it wasn't a royal twin, and it wasn't a diplomat, then who in the world was it?
Let's move on to the modern breakthrough. Recent historical detective work has pieced together a theory that finally makes sense of all the contradictions. That weird combination of a lowly valet and a highest level of state security.
And here it is. This is the pivot that cracks the whole case wide open. The motive wasn't about royal bloodlines. It was about money. A lot of money. The secret wasn't about who the prisoner was, but what he knew. Specifically, he knew about massive, illegal financial corruption that went right to the top of the French government.
This brings us to the modern theory, often called the Sonnino thesis. It identifies our man as a valet named Eustache Dauger. Dauger worked for the treasurer of Cardinal Mazarin, the incredibly powerful minister who basically ran France before Louis XIV took full control. And in that job, Dauger stumbled upon an absolutely explosive secret. Mazarin had gotten rich by, among other things, defrauding the exiled English royal family.
So let's break down why his knowledge was so dangerous, because this plays out like a spy thriller. In 1669, just when Dauger started to talk, Louis XIV was in the middle of negotiating a super-secret, critical alliance with England's King Charles II. If Charles found out that France's most powerful minister had ripped off his family, well, the deal would be toast. And to protect that treaty, Louis had to make the one witness, this valet who knew way too much, just disappear.
See? This theory solves the paradox. He was only a valet, but he held a secret that could have toppled the king's entire foreign policy. So now, let's explore the really interesting part. Why has this dramatic but false legend of an iron mask and a secret twin been so much more powerful than the chilling bureaucratic truth?
Let's start with the mask itself. The whole Iron Mask thing, that's pure fiction. It was a brilliant piece of propaganda invented by Voltaire to make the punishment sound way more barbaric. The actual records, including that journal from the Bastille's lieutenant, consistently describe the mask as being made of black velvet. Its purpose wasn't torture, it was practical. It was just to ensure anonymity when they had to move the prisoner so no one could ever recognize his face. So why are we still obsessed with this story hundreds of years later? Well, because it just works on so many levels. For Voltaire, it was a weapon to fight tyranny. For the novelist Alexandre Dumas, it was the ultimate swashbuckling adventure. And for us, it's this terrifying symbol of what the state can do to an individual. The reality is just as powerful, though. It reveals the dirty financial secret that helped pay for all the glory of the Sun King's reign. So, I'll just leave you with this question to think about. The legend of the royal twin is a dramatic family tragedy for sure. But the truth, the story of Eustache Dauger, that might be even more disturbing. It's the story of a bureaucratic machine so powerful, so efficient, that it can take an ordinary person who just saw something he shouldn't have and simply wipe him from existence. So what do you think is the real horror story here?